I, 38 male, have been married to Rach, 37 female, for 4 years. She has always had a heart too big for her own good. That was one of the things I loved about her when we first met. She's kind, selfless, always looking out for others. But somewhere along the way, I realized that kindness wasn't always a virtue. It becomes a weakness when you don't know how to draw a boundary. You see, we both earn well enough to live comfortably, enough to plan for our future. We opted to remain childless. Actually, I was neutral. For me, having kids is like good to have, but not mandatory. On the other hand, for Rach, it was a deal breaker. She didn't want kids at all, as she felt they take away a lot of good years that one can spend growing a career, traveling, and enjoying life. She didn't want to ruin her body and waste her time. She called them bad investments. She's a banker. She believes that parents invest all their money, time, and energy, and after 2 decades, the kids are gone and forget their parents' existence. I used to find her theory hilarious. She's definitely an ambitious woman and shines in her career. I admired her and accepted the decision to remain child-free. I came into this marriage thinking we would build a fulfilling life together. But the problem is, Rachel's future has never really been about the two of us. It has always included her family, her parents, her younger brother, and her sister. When we discussed finances early in our marriage, she told me she sends a small portion of her income to her parents every month. They were retired, her siblings were still in college, and she felt it was her duty to support them. I was fine with that. It made sense. Taking care of one's parents was understandable, as they had worked hard to send her to the college of her dreams. Lending a few bucks to young siblings when they're in college didn't seem like a big deal. But it became problematic when the handouts continued, even when they started earning. What started as financial assistance for her parents turned into something much bigger. Soon, her brother started asking for money. He was always in some kind of trouble, failing to pay rent, having his car repossessed, losing money in a business venture that he swore would pay off but never did. And every single time, Rach bailed him out. If I raised an eyebrow, she would brush off my concerns and say, "He's just going through a rough patch." Then there was her sister, Emily. She had a habit of living beyond her means, shopping for designer clothes, planning extravagant vacations, and changing jobs every few months because she didn't feel appreciated. Whenever she overspent and ended up struggling to pay her bills, guess who stepped in to cover the gap? Rachel, I voiced my concerns repeatedly. Rach, you're not their ATM. They need to take responsibility for their own lives. She would always sigh and say, "They're my family. I just can't turn my back on them." It wasn't just the money. It was the expectation that she would always be there to clean up their messes. There was the time her brother borrowed money to buy a car, promising to pay her back, only to conveniently forget about it for months. I pressed her to ask for repayment, and she did, once meekly. He paid less than half of it, and she never mentioned it again. Then, there was the time her sister wanted to move to a better apartment, but didn't have the deposit. Rach covered it, and of course, Emily never even attempted to repay her. Each time I tried to make her see reason, she dismissed my concerns and defended them. It's just this once. But it was never just once. It was a pattern, and they knew exactly how to manipulate her. The worst part? Every time I tried to step in, to reason with her, to make her see how they were using her, she would get defensive. "You don't understand, they're my family. Stop trying to turn me against them." And now, we've hit a new low. Emily's getting married, and her parents have somehow decided that it is Rachel's responsibility to pay for the wedding. Not help with the wedding, pay for it. When she first brought it up, she hesitantly said, "Babe, Emily's wedding is coming up, and things are tight for her and her fiancé." I was thinking we could pitch in a little. I didn't even hesitate and replied, "No." She looked at me like I had slapped her. "What do you mean, no?" I was already pissed off by her question. Yet I maintained my calm and replied that it was their wedding, and they should be the ones figuring it out, not us. She fought back, saying, "I know, but they're struggling, and it's not like we can't afford to help." I still calmly responded, "That's not the point. You've already given enough. You've bailed out your brother and sister more times than I can count. When does it stop?" She had no answer. She just remained quiet and then went back to bed. A few days later, she again brought up that her parents were asking her to pitch in for Emily. I was like, tell your parents firmly that you don't want to. She asked me, and what should I say? Why can't I? Should I tell them we got scammed and lost all our savings? I was puzzled at her suggestion and said, why do you have to give them a reason? Just tell them, sorry, I can't help. She snapped at me. They're my parents. I just can't say no without any reason. I owe them an explanation. I said, cool. It's your problem. You figure it out. Don't drag me into this. She remained distressed for days, and it wasn't a pleasant sight for me. I mean, if the problem is ours, then it's worth stressing over. But here, the problem isn't even ours, and she was breaking her head over it. Then, a week later, she came to me with a proposal, asking me to lend her the money and promising to return it. I let out a humorless laugh and said, that's not the issue. The thing is, you shouldn't be doing this at all. Your parents should be telling Emily to budget within their means, not pushing you to cover for her. She got angry at me and asked, do you want to help or not? It's a yes or no question. You don't need to lecture me over this. I lost my cool. I had been tolerating her BS until now because it was her money, and I wasn't affected by it. But everything has a limit. She can't disrespect me while putting her blood family on a pedestal. She immediately apologized and said she didn't mean to hurt me, just that she was stressed out. Who wouldn't be? She has her own bills to pay, has to send a monthly allowance to her parents, and bails out her siblings once in a while. At least one of them has something each month. Then, we have an emergency fund and our savings account, where we religiously pour in large sums every month. There's hardly anything left with her after all this. The dinner dates and any other last-minute plans come on me. Despite earning so much, she has to think twice before spending on luxury, just because of her parasite family. Out of empathy, I asked her if she wanted me to take a stand for her, and she was delighted. I called her father and told him that it was unreasonable for us to pay for Emily's wedding. He immediately clarified that they didn't ask me to pitch in. I chuckled and said, R and I are not separate. If she's spending any money on any of you, it means it's going away from our house, and ultimately, it's our loss. She could do so many things with that money. Anyway, I don't want to get caught up in the details. Just want to inform you that this time, we're out. She was overjoyed at my gesture, hugged me, and thanked me. However, her phone started buzzing immediately. This woman, who's so fierce in front of me, curled up and didn't answer her mom's call, afraid that she might lash out at her. I noticed she was happy for the next few days, until she answered her mom's phone once. Rach was talking to her mom on speaker, and I overheard them from the other room. Her mom was saying, Emily's your sister, your own blood. She needs you. Don't let an outsider manipulate you into thinking it's not your problem. I immediately barged in and confronted her. Who is the outsider she's talking about? Was it me, her effing husband? She hung up the call and apologized for her mom's words. I said, I want to have that lady answer this. Rach begged me to stay out of it. Now, I'm exhausted. I love my wife, but I feel like I'm in a marriage with her entire family. No matter how much I try to protect her, she won't protect herself. I'm starting to wonder how much more I can take. This is not only her problem anymore. If she's broke, it becomes my problem too. And I can't let that slide because her family's keen on making her bankrupt. It's just so frustrating. Update 1. You know what she did? She emptied our savings to fund her stupid sister's stupid wedding. I had no clue about it until recently. I was planning to upgrade my car, and that's when I found out about the empty joint account. I don't get transaction notifications as she's the primary holder. The balance was nearly wiped out. My stomach dropped as I double-checked the transactions, and there it was, large withdrawals, all moved to R's personal account. It was evident where it went. I waited for her to come home, trying to keep myself from exploding. When she walked through the door, I confronted her immediately. What happened to our savings? My voice was calm, but my hands were trembling. She looked startled, but quickly composed herself and said, Calm down. Let's sit and talk. I could no longer control myself, and I screamed, You blew off our savings on that stupid wedding, didn't you? She took offense at my words, but quickly backed off and cooled down. I had to. I had no choice. She's my sister. I intervened. You had a choice. and you chose them over our future." She helplessly said, "You don't understand." They threatened to cut me off if I didn't help. I interrupted, "No, I do understand. I understand that you keep choosing them over me, over us." Tears welled in her eyes, and she assured me, "It's just money. We can save again. I promise I'll fill in every penny I took out from there." I laughed bitterly. "It's not just money, it's trust, it's respect. And you've thrown both away. You didn't just steal, you betrayed me. What did you think? That you'd put the money back and I wouldn't find out?" This month, she had deposited double the amount she usually put in that savings account. The argument went downhill from there. She refused to acknowledge that she had betrayed me, insisting I was overreacting. I was so furious that I moved to the guest bedroom. We were not on speaking terms when her sister visited us, glowing with newlywed happiness. She greeted me, I greeted her, and I went back to the spare room. She sensed the tension. Maybe R had told her. Later that day, her mom called me, saying I shouldn't be harsh on my wife. As a husband, you should support her. Money shouldn't take precedence over marriage. I was like, "Really? And you're the one preaching this? The same person who threatened to cut off your daughter when she refused to pitch in?" She got bitter at me and said her daughter was a fool for tolerating such tantrums from me, then hung up. That was the last straw. I gave R an ultimatum. Either choose me in our marriage, or continue being a puppet for your family's endless demands. I cannot tolerate any more disrespect. She tried to make me understand that her mom didn't mean it, and apologized on her behalf. The fight continued for days, but I stood my ground and said, either them or me. Lastly, she broke down and whispered, "How can I abandon the people who brought me into this world?" I got my answer. I was devastated, but also relieved in a way. There was no coming back from this. I filed for divorce immediately. When I served her the papers, she howled and pleaded like a baby not to leave her. But I was done with the pushover. I asked her to move out or find accommodation. She informed her parents, and they immediately rushed to ship her away. The divorce is not yet finalized. It's draining, splitting assets, negotiating terms, and dealing with her attempts to guilt trip me into reconsidering. She even tried to stall the process, hoping I would change my mind. But I stood firm. It hurts, but I know I'm making the right decision. I refuse to be a secondary character in my own life, constantly sacrificing for people who never once considered my well-being. Soon I'll be free and I'll rebuild my life. This might be my last post on this thread. Thanks for reading. Update 2. It's been 2 years since my divorce. Life had moved on, or at least mine had. I'm in a better place emotionally, financially, and mentally. Ra paid me back half the money she used from our joint account. I had spent last year rebuilding myself, focusing on my career, and even started seeing someone. Ra became my past, and I rarely thought about her, until 2 weeks back, when she showed up at my workplace. It was unexpected, to say the least. I was in the middle of a meeting when my secretary buzzed me, saying that my ex-wife was here to see me. I stepped out of my office and saw her standing there. She looked different. The confident, ambitious woman I'd once married was gone. Instead, she looked drained, tired, and a little lost. She had lost weight. Her once perfectly styled hair was now in a simple ponytail, and her bright, determined eyes looked hollow. I took a deep breath before greeting her and asked, "What are you doing here?" She swallowed hard, as if she was gathering courage, and asked, "Can we talk? Just for a bit?" I debated for a moment, but eventually nodded. I led her to a small cafe across the street. I kept the conversation polite and transactional. The last thing I wanted was to get sucked back into the mess I had left behind. She didn't waste any time and blurted out, "I made a mistake. I should have never let you go." I sighed. "Please don't start this." She interrupted in a trembling voice. "Please just let me say this. After the divorce, I moved back in with my parents. They were happy, happy that I left you. That should have been my first warning sign. I thought they would be there for me, but it didn't take long for me to see the truth. They were happy, because now all my money was theirs." I stayed silent and patiently heard what she had to say. Her eyes welled up as she confessed, "They only loved me when I was paying their bills." I moved out as soon as that realization hit me. They barely noticed. I was so alone, and that's when it hit me. I had thrown away my marriage for them. I had sacrificed the one person who truly cared about me. And for what? I thought about reaching out to you so many times, but I was too ashamed. And then things got worse. She had lost her job. The bank she worked for had gone through layoffs, and since she had no savings left, she was in trouble. She survived on her income as long as she could, but the market had been harsh for the last 2 years. Desperately, she had asked her parents to let her stay with them again. They had agreed on one condition: she had to pay rent. She let out a painful laugh. My own parents. After everything I had done for them, after years of supporting them, they asked me for rent when I had nothing. My brother and sister were no better. They turned their backs on me too. I was completely alone. If it weren't for a friend who let me crash at her place, I don't know what I would have done. I felt a pang of sympathy, but I remained quiet. She hesitantly said, "And there's something else. It wasn't just about the money. They manipulated me, poisoned my mind against you. They were the ones who convinced me not to have kids, telling me that children would ruin my career, my body, my freedom. They made me believe that staying child-free was the best decision for my life. But now I realize it was never about me. It was about them, keeping me tied to them forever so I wouldn't drain money on my kids. And they didn't stop there. They planted doubts about you, whispering that you were trying to control me, that you didn't really care about my family, that you'd eventually leave me. I believed them, and I let those lies dictate my choices." I shook my head. "I tried to show you the truth, Ra, but you wouldn't listen." She said bitterly, "I reached out to Emily first. She's been flaunting her rich husband's money. I thought after everything I'd done for her, after paying for her dream wedding, she would at least be there for me. I called her, explaining the situation, and you know what she said? She told me, 'Oh, R, I really wish I could help you, but you know how it is. We just bought a new house, and we're traveling to the Bahamas next month for summer. Money's tight.'" Money's tight? From the woman who had a luxury wedding I funded? "This was just too much to bear," she continued. I asked, "Didn't she even offer you a place to stay?" She chuckled. She didn't even suggest it. She quickly changed the topic, started talking about something else. She made it clear she didn't want to help and didn't feel like she owed me anything. "And your brother?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. She scoffed. "Oh, he was even worse. I called him hoping that maybe, just maybe, he'd remember all the times I bailed him out. But he just sighed and said, 'Rach, I've got my own problems, you know. I'm still trying to get my business up and running. Maybe you should ask Mom and Dad.' I told him they wanted rent from me, and you know what he said? 'Well, that's fair. It's their house. What else do you expect?' He had no shame, no guilt, nothing. And this was the same dude who called me every month asking for help. But now that I needed him, he couldn't even pretend to care." I shook my head and consoled her. "I'm sorry, but I don't know what you expected. You spent years taking care of them, enabling them. They never saw you as family. They saw you as a safety net. And the moment you couldn't provide, they cut you loose. This was the very thing I warned you about." She nodded, wiping a stray tear. "I see that now. I really do. But it's too late, isn't it?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. She looked at me then, hopeful, vulnerable. "I know it's a lot to ask, but is there any chance we can try again? I still love you. I never stopped. And I know you loved me too." She didn't come to me when she was broke because she thought I might assume it was for the money. She struggled, lived on her friend's couch for months, worked a low-paying job to survive, and now that she was finally back on her feet, she came to me. She's now working at one of the top banks in the country. It was admirable and commendable, but it was too late, and I was already seeing someone else. I'm not saying if I wasn't dating, I would have taken her back. Number only. If she had understood me and listened to me while we were married, we would have been happy and together today. When she found out I was dating, she flinched as if I had slapped her. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but she nodded slowly. "I see. I guess I deserved that." I didn't know what else to say, so I simply said, I hope you find happiness too. I really do. She wiped her tears and gave me a sad smile before walking away. For a moment, I felt bad. No matter what happened between us, I had once loved this woman. But then, a week later, I saw something that erased all the little compassion I had. She posted pictures on social media, dining with her family at a high-end restaurant. She didn't look happy, but she was with them. The same people who had drained her dry, abandoned her, and then welcomed her back only when it suited them. She happily became their golden goose again. And that's when I knew some people never learn. I closed the app, shook my head, and moved on. Glad I was out of it.